confessed to my childhood best friend in high school, and he laughed in my face and said dating a girl my size would embarrass him in front of his friends. Now he's stalking me because other guys starts to notice me. In my last year of high school, I had a crush on a boy named Tobias. We had been friends since we were kids, the kind of friends who sat together at lunch and texted each other at night about nothing in particular. And I had spent years feeling like I had to earn my place in that friendship by being the nice one, the funny one, the one who always listened and never asked for too much. I was heavier than most of the other girls, and I had learned early that the way to survive that was to make myself useful enough that people forgot to notice the rest. So one afternoon, I finally told Tobias how I felt. I had practiced what I was going to say for a week, going over the words in the shower and in the car, and before I fell asleep at night. He looked at me, and then he laughed, small and quiet, like I had said something mildly silly, and he said, "Come on, you know I could never date someone who looks like you." People would ask what I was thinking. He said it without cruelty, but without hesitation either, that he had a certain image to think about, and that being seen with a girl my size would make him look bad in front of his friends. He told me I should be happy just being his friend, because that was the best I was going to get. Then he picked up his bag and went to sit with his friends, and I stayed there alone with my lunch. For a few weeks, I let it crush me. I stopped eating much, avoided mirrors, wore the biggest clothes I owned so no one could see any part of me that I could not hide. But then something shifted. I got angry, and the anger was better than the sadness. I was angry that I had spent years shrinking myself for a boy who thought I should be grateful for scraps. I decided I was done apologizing for taking up space. I started walking every morning, not to be thin for him, but because it cleared my head. I started cooking real food instead of skipping meals. I bought clothes that actually fit instead of hiding in fabric, a red dress I had wanted for 2 years, and a jacket that made me feel sharp. Some of the weight came off and a lot of it did not, and for the first time in my life I did not care about the difference. I walked into school in clothes I chose, with my head up, and I stopped waiting to be picked. The change was not in my body. It was in the way I stopped flinching when someone looked at me. Other people noticed before I did. Boys who had never looked at me twice started saying hi in the hallway, holding doors, asking if I wanted to study together. I was not interested in most of them, but it felt different to be seen as a person instead of a punchline. And Tobias noticed all of it. The same boy who told me I would embarrass him now found reasons to walk near me, to drop into the seat beside me, to bring up old memories from when we were kids like he was laying them out as evidence of something. One day he caught me at my locker and said, "I miss you. Every guy in this school is suddenly talking to you and I do not like it. You were mine, sort of, before all this. Now it feels like I am losing my best friend." I stood there and let those words sink in. This was the same person who had told me, to my face, that being seen with me would humiliate him. Now that other people found me worth their time, he was upset. Not because he had hurt me, but because he no longer had exclusive access to someone he had dismissed. He had wanted me to stay the safe option, the girl in the corner who would always be there when he was bored, never good enough to date, but always available to keep on a shelf. He went on, getting more irritated, saying I had changed, that I used to be the kind of person a guy could just be comfortable with, and that these other boys were not going to treat me the way he would have. I asked him how he would have treated me. He said he had always cared about me. I reminded him that he had told me 8 months ago that I would make him look bad. He had no answer for that. I closed my locker and went to class. He said he missed me, that he felt like he was losing his best friend, that he had always had feelings for me deep down and had just been scared to say so. I told him it was too late. I told him I had learned to only spend time on people who liked me when it was inconvenient for them, not just when it was easy. He read it and started typing back and stopped 3 times and then said nothing at all. I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. The first sign came when a boy named Vicente, who sat behind me in history and had been asking me real questions about myself for 2 solid weeks, walked into class one Tuesday and sat down without turning around. No hello, no eye contact, nothing. Like I had become invisible between Friday and now. I caught him in the hallway between classes and asked what happened. He shifted his weight and said, "Look, I think you are cool, but your boy Tobias pulled me aside and told me you two have a thing and that I need to back off." I told him that was a lie, that Tobias had no claim on me, that they were not together and never had been. Vicente rubbed the back of his neck and said, "He told me you would say that. He said you two have history and that you are going through a phase right now. He told me I would regret it if I kept talking to you." The way he said that last part, quiet and fast, like he did not want the words in his mouth, told me everything I needed to know. Vicente was not just annoyed or confused, he was spooked, and the damage was already done. I stood there in that hallway with my hands shaking at my sides and felt something click into place in my chest. This was not a boy confused about his feelings. This was a boy who had decided that if he could not have me, nobody else was going to get close enough to try. I went to Ayana, my closest friend, and told her what happened. She crossed her arms and said, "That was not the first time. I've been hearing things for a few weeks now. A girl in my gym class said her friend's brother got the same speech from Tobias. Another boy asked about you and then completely lost interest after Tobias got to him." I did not say anything because I was not sure, but I am sure now. I leaned against the wall because I needed something solid behind me. This was not one bad moment. This was Tobias going around school, boy by boy, building a wall around me that I could not even see, and he had been doing it for weeks while I was busy thinking he had finally accepted it and moved on. I spent the next 2 days quietly asking questions of boys who had gone from friendly to invisible practically overnight. One said Tobias had warned him off with a story about a jealous ex situation that was not worth the drama. Another said Tobias had told him I was emotionally unstable and that he was trying to protect people from getting involved with me. Emotionally unstable, protect people, like I was some kind of liability, and Tobias was out here doing everyone a public service by keeping them away from me. I tried getting him to admit it over text that night, sending something casual about how things had been weird, and I wanted to understand where his head was at, but every message he sent back was clean and careful. Things like, "I just care about you and I always have," and "Some of these guys do not know you like I do." He never put the real damage in writing. He did all of it face to face, where there was no record, no proof, just his word against mine, and a trail of boys who had quietly stepped back and said nothing. Then Ayana told me about Warren. Warren was a boy in our grade who existed entirely on his own island. He did not play sports, did not go to parties, and had a reputation for saying exactly what he thought whether you wanted to hear it or not. He was honest to the point where most people found him uncomfortable to be around, and he clearly did not care about anyone's social standing or what being associated with a particular person might cost him. Tobias had nothing over him. He could not scare him the way he had scared everyone else. I found Warren after last period and told him everything. He stood with his arms crossed and listened without interrupting once, and when I was done he was quiet for a few seconds. Then he said, "Yeah, Tobias talked to me too, about 3 weeks ago. Told me you were, quote-unquote, not all there, and that I should keep my distance." 3 weeks. That meant this had started even earlier than I thought. I asked why he had not pulled back like the others. His face cracked into a small grin, the kind that looked like it did not show up very often, and he said, "Because I do not take advice from guys who are threatened by girls who stopped needing them." For the first time in days, I almost smiled, but then Warren's face went serious again, and he lowered his voice. He said, "You should also know he has been showing up places. I saw him parked outside the coffee shop where you study on Saturdays. Twice. And I thought it was a coincidence the first time, but the second time he was just sitting in his car, watching the door. Everything in my body went still. The coffee shop on Saturdays was my place. The one spot I went alone with my laptop and a drink just to be in peace. Nobody from school went there. It was a quiet little spot in a strip mall near my neighborhood, and the only reason anyone would be parked outside watching the door was if they were specifically there to track who was inside. Tobias had been sitting in his car watching me. This was not a boy running his mouth in hallways anymore. This was not petty jealousy or hurt feelings. He was following me to places that had nothing to do with school, nothing to do with him, keeping tabs on me like I was something that had gotten loose and needed to be monitored. I thanked Warren. My voice came out quieter than I wanted it to. He nodded, said he would keep his eyes open, put his headphones on, and walked away like we had been discussing homework. I stood there in that hallway after he left and felt something cold settle into my chest. Not fear exactly, but the kind of feeling that comes when you realize the situation is larger and worse than you thought it was. I called Ayana that night and told her what Warren had said. She went quiet for a long time and then said we needed to tell someone, a teacher, her parents, somebody with authority, but I knew better. Without something solid they could not explain away, Tobias would just smile and say he was worried about me, that we used to be close and he was just checking in. His texts would back him up perfectly. He was too good at playing innocent, and I realized something sitting there that I had not fully understood until that moment. Tobias had not just been doing damage in the present. He had been building backward, constructing a past that would make any future accusation look like the raving of someone who could not move on. Every sweet text he sent me, every warm memory he brought up, every time he called himself a good friend in front of someone else, he was adding another brick to a wall. If I ever told the truth, the wall was already there, and he was standing comfortably on the other side of it looking reasonable and kind. That same night, I opened my phone and started scrolling through old photos. There was one from his 12th birthday where we were both making stupid faces at the camera with frosting on our noses. One from a summer at his grandma's house, sitting on the porch steps eating popsicles and squinting in the sun. One from the first day of 8th grade, standing side by side with our new backpacks, looking so young and so certain the world was simple. I looked at those pictures for a long time. I felt something I did not want to feel. I felt sad. Not angry, not furious, just sad. Because there had been a real version of Tobias in those photos. A kid who laughed at my jokes and shared his food and walked me home when it got dark, who had not yet learned that other people's opinions were more important than being decent to someone who trusted him. I picked up my phone and typed out, "Can we just talk? For real this time?" and sat there with my thumb hovering over the send button. Then my phone rang. It was Ayana, and her voice was tight in the way that meant she was holding something in and figuring out how to say it. She said, "Do not send him anything right now. I just talked to a girl from his friend group. Tobias has been telling people that you are obsessed with him, that you keep chasing him and he is trying to let you down easily. He flipped the whole story. He is telling everyone that you are the one who will not leave him alone." I sat there with the phone against my ear and the unsent message glowing on my screen and felt every drop of sympathy I had been sitting in drain out of me all at once. I looked down at the words I had typed and deleted them, character by character, and watched the sadness get replaced by something harder and cleaner. Every soft moment from Tobias over the past few weeks landed differently now. The nostalgic texts, the childhood memories, the "I just want my friend back" line that had almost made me believe him. It was all set up. He had been building a version of events piece by piece, a story where he was the patient victim and I was the desperate girl who could not take a hint, so that if I ever opened my mouth and told people what he was really doing, they would already have a reason not to believe me. He had poisoned the well before I even got there. I sat on the edge of my bed and said it out loud to my empty room. I said, "He does not get to rewrite this." The school talent show was in 4 days. I had signed up to do a spoken word piece, which scared me more than anything else I could have chosen because there was nothing to hide behind. No music, no costume, no choreography, just me and a microphone and words I had written about what it felt like to spend years making yourself smaller so other people could be comfortable, and what it felt like to finally stop. I had started writing it a few weeks earlier, sitting on my bedroom floor with a notebook, and the words had come faster than I expected, like they had been waiting in my chest for me to open the door. Ayana came over every afternoon and sat cross-legged on my floor and listened to me run through it, stopping me when I talked too fast, pointing to the lines that hit and the ones that needed more room to breathe. She never tried to change what I wrote. She just helped me find the right way to carry it. There was one night during that week when I almost backed out. I sat in my room with the notebook in my lap and thought about what would happen if I stood up there and said all of it, and the room just stared at me. Thought about Tobias sitting in the audience with that easy smile of his, shaking his head slowly like I was proving his point, and all his friends watching me come apart. I called Ayana and told her I was thinking about pulling out. She was quiet for a second, and then she said, "He already wrote the version of this where you stay quiet. If you back out now, that is the only version that exists." I sat with that for a long time. She was right. If I said nothing, his story was the only story. Warren started checking in during the week too, finding me between classes to ask if I was still going through with it, nodding when I said yes, saying nothing else. He stopped me outside the library one afternoon and said he wanted a spot in the third row in case anything went sideways. I told him I would be on the stage. He said he meant in case someone in the audience tried to make it about them. He did not say Tobias's name. He did not have to. The night of the talent show, the auditorium was packed wall to wall. I was standing behind the curtain holding a folded piece of paper, and my fingers were shaking so bad I could see the edges trembling. Ayana was right beside me, shoulder against mine, not saying anything, which was exactly what I needed. I looked through the gap in the curtain and found Warren, third row, right where he said he would be, arms crossed over his chest, eyes fixed not on the stage but on the auditorium door. He was watching who came in. About 10 minutes before the show was supposed to start, the door at the back opened and Tobias walked in with a group of friends, laughing about something, bag slung over one shoulder, looking like a person with absolutely nothing in the world to worry about. He found a spot in the middle of the auditorium, stretched his legs out, waved at someone a few rows ahead. He looked relaxed. He looked like a boy who was just there to have a good time. I let the curtain fall and took a breath deep enough to feel my ribs push against my shirt. Ayana squeezed my arm once. Then they called my name. I walked out onto that stage and the lights hit me, and for a second, I could not see anything except brightness and the dark shapes of hundreds of people sitting in rows below me. The microphone was standing in the center of the stage like it had been waiting. I stepped up to it, unfolded my paper, and said, I wrote this about learning how to take up space. I started slow, the way we had practiced. I talked about what it felt like to be the girl who made herself smaller so everyone around her could be more comfortable. I talked about laughing at jokes made about my body, because laughing was easier than crying. And if I laughed first, maybe it would not hurt as much when they laughed second. I talked about how the people who want you to be quiet are almost always the people who benefit the most from your silence. My voice was shaking at the start, but steadied as I went. Like each sentence was solid ground, and the further I walked, the less I wobbled. The room was completely still. Nobody was on their phone. Nobody was looking anywhere except at me. A few girls in the front row were nodding with small, tight nods, the kind that meant they knew exactly what I was talking about. Then I shifted. I kept my eyes on the paper and said, I told someone I loved him, and he laughed. He said being seen with me would embarrass him. And I believed him. I believed I was the problem. I paused and let that sit in the room. Let it land on every seat in every row. Then I kept going. But months later, when other people started seeing me, he came back. Not because he loved me, because he could not stand that someone else might. He told boys to stay away from me. He spread lies about who I was. He showed up where I was and watched me from his car. And then he told everyone that I was the one who could not let go. The room went so quiet I could hear the hum of the stage lights. Then one by one, like a slow wave moving through the rows, heads started turning toward the middle of the auditorium, toward Tobias. For about 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Tobias stood up. His face was deep red, the kind that comes from the inside when your body knows it has been caught. He said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "This is ridiculous. She is making this up. She has been chasing me for months and I have been trying to be nice about it." His voice cracked on the last word. I did not flinch. I did not step back from the microphone. I looked right at him and leaned in and said, "If that is true, then why did you tell Vicente we were dating? Why did you warn Warren to stay away from me? Why were you parked outside the coffee shop on 2 different Saturdays?" Then Warren stood up, third row, arms at his sides, voice flat and clear. He said, "She is telling the truth. He told me she was unstable and to keep my distance." I saw him parked outside watching her. Vicente rose from a seat 3 rows behind Tobias. His voice was quieter but carried because nobody else in the room was breathing. He said, he told me the same thing. Said they were together and that I would regret talking to her. Then Ayana stood up near the side aisle, steady and even. She said, "I can confirm all of it. I have been watching this for weeks." 3 people, and 3 separate voices from 3 different parts of the room, all saying the same thing at the same time. Tobias looked left, then right, scanning the rows for someone who was going to stand up for him. His friends were all still sitting, staring at their laps or at their phones, very suddenly interested in anything that was not him. Nobody stood. Nobody spoke. He opened his mouth and then closed it again. He stood there for 2 more seconds and then pushed past the knees of the people in his row and walked toward the exit. He did not run. He just walked, fast and stiff, head down, hands in his pockets. And the door at the back of the auditorium opened and then closed, and he was gone. I turned back to the microphone. The paper in my hand was wrinkled from how hard I had been gripping it. I leaned in and said, "I did not do this to embarrass him. I did this because I spent months being afraid that no one would believe me if I spoke. And I decided that the only thing scarier than being called crazy is staying quiet and letting someone else tell your story." I folded the paper and walked off the stage. Ayana was already there and pulled me into a hug so tight my feet shifted. When I pulled back, I looked toward the third row. Warren was still in his seat, arms still crossed, not clapping, not smiling. He gave me one single nod, slow and certain, the kind that did not need anything added to it. The next morning, I walked into school, sat down in my first class, and looked across the room at the seat where Tobias usually sat. It was empty. I looked at it for 1 second and then I opened my notebook.